Alright guys, welcome to Learnlyte. In this video, we're going to be working with files. Now you may have known this or you may not have known, but Python allows you to read data from a file and write data to a file. This is incredibly awesome because we know that a large amount of data can be stored in a single file. Alright, so before we begin, let's take a look at some of the things that I've done for this video. So I've created this file text.txt and you can see right here it has some data in it, and we'll be reading the data from this file. So you can go ahead and create a text file of your own and you can load whatever information data you want in it. But here you can see I just have 3 lines right here with basically some gibberish, hello world and goodbye, some phone numbers, and this last statement, knowledge is power. So you can go ahead and create a text file similar like this one if you want, or any file rather, and you can basically work along. So this is the file that I've created, and this is the file that I'll be using to basically read data from. Alright, and something else that you should note is that when working with files, Python tends to look in the same directory that the script is being executed. So since my script is going to be executed from this folder right here, I place the text.txt file in this folder. So when Python looks for it, it'll find it. So just bear that in mind. And let's continue. So the first thing that we're going to do in this video is read data from a file. And like I said before, I've already created this file, the text.txt, and this is the data that I'll be reading. Alright, so let's begin. I'm going to bring up my script here. Alright, so the first thing is when we want to read a file, we can either do it one of two ways. We can read the entire file, or we can read a file line by line. So we can read the entire file content, or we can read a single line at a time, one by one. In this example, we're going to read the entire file content. So let's begin. First, I'm going to create a function called file. We won't take any arguments. Then the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say with open. And inside the open function, I'm going to pass the name of the file, which is text.txt. Then I'm going to say as file underscore object and end with a colon. So you're probably wondering what's happening in this entire line. Well, let me explain. The open function, right, is basically, just think of it as this. Before we work with any sort of file, or before we start to basically do any sort of work with a file, the first thing that we need to do is to open that file. So before we read it, before we write it, before we do anything with a file, we first have to open it. And that's what this open function does. The argument it takes is the name of the file in quotation. So we pass the name of the file to the open function, and what open does, basically takes the file and converts it into a file object. This file object represents the file as how Python sees it. So it takes the name of a file and then gives us an object representing that file. And basically what this keyword as does is basically we are assigning a name to that file object that the open function created. So we're saying that we open this text file right here, and the open function basically returns a file object that we have called file underscore object, and that's what this as does. The with now, basically, this is a keyword in Python that tells Python whenever we're done working with this file to just close it. So that's very important. So once we're finished working with the text.txt, the with just tells Python once we're done working with it, close the file. And that's exactly what we want. Alright? So I hope you understand that, and let's move on. So I'm going to create a variable called contents. And what is going to be stored inside contents, I'm going to say the file object, right? This was created when we opened the file, and with the simple as is just a keyword for basically naming the file object created as file underscore object. And what we're going to do to this file object is we're going to read the data, all the data, and that's what this read function basically does, this read method. So we have the file object and we say dot read. And what it does is the read basically takes the file object, goes into the file, reads everything and converts it into a string, and then restoring that string into contents. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to print the contents. Alright, and that's it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run this function. Go ahead, hit save. And if we call the function file, you're going to see we get hello world and goodbye. All this null, all these numbers right here, and we get knowledge is power, never stop learning. And if we go back to the text file and we open it, we see that is the exact same thing. Hello world and goodbye, hello world and goodbye. So you can see we just read data from a file. Alright, and that's pretty awesome. So that's one way I told you we can read data from a file. We can read all the data at once. But sometimes, let's say you have a large file and this file has thousands and thousands of lines. You won't want to read all that data at once. So in this case, I'm going to show you how to read data from a file by just reading a single line. So we're going to read just a single line of data from this file. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. Alright, so I'm going to create a function called file2. This won't take any arguments either. Now what we're going to do, we're going to say with open, and we know that open takes the name of the file that we'll be working with. The name of the file is text.txt, and we know that open basically opens the file and converts it to a file object that we're going to call file underscore object. Alright, and then what we're going to do, we're going to read data from this file, but rather than read the entire file content, we're going to read just a single line, which is the first line. And I'm going to create this variable called line. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to say file underscore object dot read line. So this reads just a single line, which would be the first line. And then all I'm going to do is just print the line. Okay. Go ahead, hit save. I'm going to run. And now I'm going to call file2 and see what we get. And we get the first line, which is hello world and goodbye. So as you can see, we just read a single line, and which is the first line. So as I said before, when reading data from a file, we can read all the data at once, or we can read a single line. Okay? In this next example, I'm going to read data from a file line by line. So suppose we want to read a file's content line by line. Then we have to iterate through all lines of information in the file. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to iterate through all the lines of information within that file and basically read them one by one. So the fact that we have to iterate tells you already that we're probably going to need some sort of loop. And that loop we're going to use is a for loop. So let's take a look at how we can read information from a file line by line. Okay. So let's start by creating another function. I'm going to create a function called file3, which won't take any arguments, and same thing as before. With, matter of fact, rather than type this out, I can just simply copy all this and just paste it right down there. Alright, so since we're going to be iterating through each line at a time, that tells us that we need a loop. And what loop we're going to use is going to be a for loop. So I'm going to say for line in file underscore object. So for each line in this file object, what I want to do, I want to print that line. Okay, pretty simple. And let's go ahead and save and run it. So let's run and see what we get. So let me call file3 and I go ahead and hit enter, and you can see it read each line at a time. So we have hello world, and goodbye, which is the first line. We have all these numbers, which is the second line, and knowledge is power, never stop learning, which is the third line. If we take a look at the file itself, which is this one, you can see that the information there is indeed correct. All right. So you've seen how we can read information from a file. We can read it line by line, we can read it all at once, or we can just read a single line. So as you can see, this is very powerful. All right. But there's one thing to note. If you take a look at this, you can see we have some white space in between them. And that's fine. But if you want to get rid of that white space, then there's a simple way of doing that. And that white space is basically due to the fact that, as you can see, after hello world and goodbye, we have this new line, or this entire white space right here, which is equivalent to this white space right here. And after the numbers, we have this amount of white space here, which is equivalent to this white space in between here. So if you want to get rid of these white spaces, it's a simple function to do that. And let's take a look at that right now. It should be fairly simple. All we're going to do, I'm going to copy this entire function right here. I'm going to paste it down here. I'm going to call this file 4 instead. Now all I'm going to do is, before I print the line, I just want to say line equals line dot strip. And what this strip function does, it just gets rid of any white spaces that may be lingering around. So the line, or should I say the new line, is equal to the line dot strip, and we're just going to print new line. Okay, go ahead and hit save. If I hit run and I call file 4, go ahead and hit enter, you can see we get the same thing as what we did before in this example. We get the same thing as we did up here, but the difference between this one is that we're reading it line by line rather than just reading everything at once. So as you can see, this is pretty powerful, and what you can do with it is limitless. So I hope you've been working along and you've been reading data from the file that you created. Okay, so now that we know how to read information from a file, let's take a look at something else. So let's take a look at how we can write information to a file. So I've already gone in my directory and I've created this file known as test.txt, which is a completely blank file. There's no information in it. And what we're going to do is, now we're going to write information to this file. So you can go ahead and create a blank file if you want, and we're going to write information to that file. Alright, so let's begin. Alright, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start by creating a new function. So I'm going to begin by naming this function file5. Basically, what we're going to do, we're going to say with open. I'm going to pass the name of the file. The name of the file that we're going to write to in this case is test.txt. And then now we're going to have to give the open function another argument. And the argument we're going to give the open function is a W in quotation. And this W stands for write. So when we open a file, we basically have to tell Python what mode we want to open the file in. We can open the file in read mode, write mode, or append mode. Since in these previous examples we did not specify what mode to open the file in, Python basically defaults to read mode. So if you don't tell Python specifically what mode you want to open the file in, it will default to read mode. So if we want to open the file in write mode, the second argument we give it is a W. If we want to open the file in read mode, we give it a R. If we want to open the file in the append mode, which I'm going to talk about later, we give it a A. So since we want to write information to this file, the mode we want to open it in is write mode, which we pass a W in quotation for. So that's what that W means, and everything else pretty much stay the same. We say as file underscore object. So we can refer to the file object created by the open function as file underscore object. And next, what we're gonna do, we're gonna say file underscore object dot write, called the write method. And then inside the write method, we're gonna basically tell Python what do we want to write inside of it. So in quotation, I'm gonna write I love programming. Okay, so we're gonna say file object dot write, and what I'm gonna write to it, I'm gonna write I love programming. And remember, this must be in quotations because when working with files, the information that you read from a file will be a string, and the information you write to a file must be a string as well. So just remember, when working with files, you're pretty much working with strings, whether you're reading or writing a file. All right, what else I want to do? I want to say file underscore object dot write. And what else do I want to write to it? I want to write I love creating games. Okay, so I'm just gonna be writing I love programming and I love creating games. So as you can take a look here, the file that we'll be working with, test.txt, is completely blank. There's no information in it. And what we're gonna do when we execute this function, we're basically gonna be writing information to that file. Let me close this. All right, let's save and hit run. All right, so just before I execute it, remember test.txt. So if I look for test.txt and I open it, it's blank. You can see that it's blank. So I'm going to close it, and now I'm going to execute this function. So file 5, go ahead and hit enter. Nothing happens, but something did happen behind the scenes. And let's take a look. So if I go ahead and I open the file now again, you can see I have I love programming, I love creating games. So we indeed wrote to the file. So you can see that the file is no longer blank. All right. So as you can see right here, let me open back the file. You can see right here the things that we wrote have been conjoined together. So let's fix that in this next example. All right, I'll go ahead and minimize this. All right, so to fix that, we just simply need to add the new line to right here. We can do it right here if we want to, but that shouldn't be necessary. So just simply add this. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna run the file. I'm gonna say file 5, hit enter, and hold on, let me close the file. Open it again. And you can see we did in fact fix it right there. So there's something important that you should note when writing information to a file. So let's say you're writing information to a file. Python will basically look in the same directory in which the script is being executed and look for that file. If the file is not there, Python will basically create the file for you. So when writing information to a file, Python will look in the same directory in which the Python script is being executed. If the file is there, it will open the file and write the information to it. If the file is not there, Python will create the file for you and then write the information to it. Also, you should also note, and this is very important, to pay close attention. When writing information to a file, any existing data that is already there will be erased and the new data will be written there. So what does that mean? If you're writing information to a file, when Python opens that file, any information that's already there will be erased and then the new information will be written. So bear that in mind. That's very key to note. All right. Now let's talk about how we append information to a file. Appending information to a file is simply writing new information to a file that already has some previous information written on it without affecting whatever was written there before. So before, I said that when we write information to a file, Python will erase any previous information and then write the new information. What we're going to do in this next example is append information to a file that already has some data on it without damaging any data that was previously there before. So as you can see, we have this test.txt file which has I love programming and I love creating games. If we were to write information to this file, what Python would do is basically erase all that we have here and then write the new information. But we don't want that. What we want to do is append new information to what is already here in this file. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. So in this example, I'm going to create a new function called file6. And what we're going to do is we're going to say with open. And what file do we want to open? We want to open the test.txt file. And what we want to do, we don't want to open it in write mode. We instead want to open it in append mode. Alright, so we want to open the file in append mode, and we're going to say as file underscore object, and then what we're going to do, what new information are we going to add to this? So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to copy all this, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste it down here, and I want to append to it. I'm going to add a new line character right here as well, so that it's not jumbled up together. So I want to add some more information to the file. And what I want to add is, I want to say, I love making websites. And I also want to add, I love building electronics. Alright, so we're basically going to append information to this file. We don't want to erase what's already here, so we want to append information to this file. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close. I'm going to save this, and now I'm going to run. Okay, so before I execute the function, let's take a look at test.txt. You can see I have I love programming and I love creating games. And what I want to do now, I want to add some information to that file without erasing what's already there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add I love making websites and I love building electronics. So let's go ahead and execute the function. File6. Go ahead and hit enter. Nothing happens, but something did happen behind the scenes. And let's take a look at test.txt. You can see right here, I love programming, I love creating games, I love making websites, and I love building electronics. But right here it's kind of conjoined, so we need to fix that. We can fix that by adding a new line character, which I did right here. Okay. Alright, so as you can see right here, we're gonna fix this. So remember, as I said before, if we write information to a file, we're basically going to erase what information was there previously and rewrite that information. So you can see here we have this now in test.txt. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna execute file 5, and that will basically, since we're writing to the file, it's gonna erase what's already there and just have I love programming and I love creating games. So let's do that. So let's call file 5. Go ahead and hit enter. So we take a look at the file now. You can see we just have this. So information there was erased and written, and the new information was written. That's why I say whenever you're writing to a file, you must be careful. And now let's append information to that file using the function file6. So let's go ahead and execute file6. Let me run this again. Let's say file6. Hit enter. And let's take a look at the new. Alright, let's close this first. Let's take a look at this. And here we go. You see how we appended the new information to the file? All right. And that's it for this video. So let's take a look at all that we've done so far. So we've talked about how to read information from a file. So we know we can read the entire content all at once, or we can read a single line at a time, or we can iterate through the file line by line and read each line at a time. And that's what we did in this example. In file 3, and we read all the contents all at once in this example file. Okay, so we talked about how to read information from a file. We also talked about how to write information to a file. And in this example, we wrote information to a file using the write method right here. So key thing to note is that when we open a file, we must specify what mode to open the file in. By default, it is normally open in read mode, but if we want to open a file in write mode, we must pass the W in quotation. And we know that when we write information to a file, it basically erases whatever previous information was there before and write the new information onto the file. If we don't want that to happen and we want to add new information to a file that already has some existing data, we must open the file in append mode, which is specified by A in quotation, which is right here. And then we basically appended some new information to the file that we had created before. Alright, so I hope you learned a lot in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoy this content, please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. And always remember to hit the notification bell so you'll always be notified whenever a new video is posted. Alright guys, thank you for watching and stay safe out there.